What's going on, everybody? This is Dr. Brent Pritt with Science of Falling, episode number 6 of the Science of Falling podcast. And I'm here with Christian Fairfax. This guy is freaking awesome. I've known him for a couple of years, and he is the co-founder and CEO, I believe, of the Flying Frog Academy over in Roanoke Park, California. It is a parkour gym at its heart, but they also do a couple other things there. Christian himself is a freaking movement genius, I would say. I don't know if he would say that, but this guy gets his hands in any kind of movement he can possibly do. As long as I've known him, he has. He does parkour. He's jumped gymnastics. He also does jujitsu, I believe, still. And he's kind of a badass. So, Christian, I'm gonna throw it over to you. Tell us about yourself and your background.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Christian. I started out with gymnastics growing up. The story is my mom put me in gymnastics at age 2 because I was scared to go down the slide. And she was like, I want to get this kid, I don't want this kid scared of simple things like that. And then, I stuck with it for a long time. I did gymnastics from age 2 to 17. And it was around that time that I found parkour. So when I was 16, 17, I found parkour, started kind of dabbling with it, but really didn't start until then. I kind of switched right from one to the other. I've done parkour for 12 years now, and been active in the parkour community that whole time. I started teaching parkour back in 2011, I believe. And I started jujitsu like 2.5, coming up on 3 years ago. So, and I've been doing that really consistently as well. So yeah, a mix of, mostly right now, it's a mix of, martial arts, mostly jujitsu and parkour.
Awesome. Yeah. So like I said, he is a movement master. He does everything he can. And you did, what was it? I don't know if you ever did breakdancing, but you had that breakdancing class at the Frog and you kind of got really into it at one point, right?
So we've done a few different workshops and stuff. So yeah, I've like dabbled here and there in capoeira and in breakdancing. I would not say that I could not call myself a breakdancer at all, mostly because I can't dance. But I know, like, so any movement art that has like tricks and acrobatics, I usually know a few things here and there from each of those. So capoeira, breakdancing, gymnastics, and tumbling, a little bit of hand balancing. But my I guess my bread and butter was parkour for 12 years. Like 10 of those years was really just parkour, as kind of as much as I could. And then the last 2.5, where I've been, like you said, I've been CEO of Flying Frog Academy. And that's, I wasn't always CEO. I've always been part of Flying Frog Academy, but a couple of my friends founded it actually. And, but they've both kind of started to move on or have moved on. And so I've taken on a bigger leadership role there. And so I'm still actively training parkour. But a lot of my training is with my students now. And I'm also actively training jujitsu a few times a week. So there's definitely, we can talk about falling in all the areas I've done for sure.
Yes, this is the guy to talk to about falling. And I know in the past I've done parkour podcasts, but I got you on here because you have that unique idea of parkour, gymnastics, and even the martial arts aspect of it too. Because these are these 3 areas where balance is just paramount, and then falling is also paramount as well. So I thought it'd be a good, unique mix. Plus, on the other side, I just want to give you props. Flying Frog was kind of one of those places where I gained a lot of confidence through the classes with you guys. I remember my first one with was Justin, and I went in, and it was like on accident. It was supposed to be an adult class and turned into be a private session because I was the only one who showed up that day. Yeah. And it was like, it just, I can't tell you how many times I was there and I had to face my fears. Like I physically got frozen. And I know, that feeling where you just you can't move because you're scared of what you're going to do. And that was a big part in my confidence to move across the country to Maine to go to PT school. So like, I got to get you Flying Frog and you guys have really influenced my life a lot. And it's influenced this project Science of Falling a lot, because I honestly wouldn't have made this project if it wasn't starting with you guys and learning some of the basic falling techniques and how powerful that is just to break down some barriers and fear and kind of learn how to use your body like you should. So props to you on that one.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, that whole Yeah, and an ounce of prevention, right? It's better than a
Mm-hmm.
pound of cure. And
For sure.
yeah, I think that um, parkour and martial arts are the two disciplines that I've seen that have the most like you need to learn how to fall. And I'd say it's a little more of a recent development in
Mm-hmm.
parkour. Maybe more like the last like 8 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, parkour on a whole is fairly recent, but
Yeah, for sure.
there's definitely been a while where everybody was just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, like just seeing a YouTube video of one of the like founders and just trying to emulate and replicate what they saw. But since there's been gyms for the last 10 years, I think Apex Movement was one of the first. Well, I guess Primal Fitness in DC was maybe the first, and then Apex Movement was
Yeah.
second or third in Colorado, and they started. They kind of started the parkour ukemi thing. Amos Rendau of Apex Movement started that. So, yeah. So really, in like 2008 or 2010 is when it kind of became more known, and then just the more gyms that have popped up, the more kind of awareness has been brought to
Mm-hmm.
this idea of being prepared, learning how to fall safely. And the athletes before that, a lot of them like landing and rolling and
Mm-hmm.
things like that was always a part of parkour.
Mm-hmm.
But this idea of like a falling continuum where you're prepared for as many possible scenarios as you can be is a little bit of a newer development, I suppose.
Which is pretty awesome because I mean, like you said, it's a fairly unique to martial arts and parkour in itself. And I would say you probably know this better than I would, but I would say the martial arts techniques are just a little bit different than the parkour techniques because it's matted versus concrete.
Yeah.
I think it's really awesome. And I've actually, I think Amos and maybe it was just Apex in general, but they did that as Parkour EDU. You know what I'm talking about, the website.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I actually was part of their like first 100 people to take their falling course, which was
Oh,
super
cool.
awesome. When I was out of Maine, I was like, yeah, I want to try to brush
Yeah.
up. I haven't been doing this stuff too much lately. And it was really well done. And they got, I think Amos Rondo was the instructor most of the time there. I think
Yeah.
was it Ryan Ford
Yep.
did part of it, and that was just a really cool thing. And seeing that continuum of that falling, of all the techniques, like they have circle drills and they have stuff on bars, they have stuff off of bars, and it's just really cool to see that stuff. Now, I find it interesting that so you were a gymnast for a bit, and
Yeah.
I mean, how much does falling play into that? Obviously, you don't want to fall because you're going to get points off and it's not going to look good.
Sure.
But as a gymnast, that's kind of part of the deal, right? You're going to fall, especially when you're learning. So, like, how important was falling and learning those falling techniques during your gymnast years? Like, was it ever emphasized, or was it kind of like, hey, try not to get hurt when you fall and land it next time?
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about that a little bit. So as we talked about, the environment is much more padded in gymnastics. So when you're learning a skill, you're learning it in a more padded environment. And, parkour gyms are going to use this too. It's a great kind of progression system where, when you're starting to learn a flip, you can't just try it on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to learn it without mats, but it's
Yep.
just a lot harder. And so if you have the mats or the foam pit or the airbag or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
you can practice those repetitions where falling is just a lot safer, and you don't have to have like a lot of skill to be able to navigate a fall in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to follow a few basic safety rules, like don't land directly on your head, because even though it's squishy, landing directly on your head in any scenario is usually not good. So, if you can follow a few basic rules, then you can stay safe. And then you kind of progress up through less matting. But that said, eventually you're competing things on the sprung floor,
Mm-hmm.
or, dismounting off the bar or whatever it may be, or vault, for example. That's like a high speed, high power one where you're flying through the air and you got to
Mm-hmm.
land. And I think as you go up through the levels and as you get older in gymnastics, the amount of matting kind of becomes less. So
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of the vault runway at the younger levels, they're just landing flat backed on like a really big portable foam pit.
Really? Okay.
And then later on, you're landing on like an 8-inch thick soft mat. And then if you watch the Olympics or something, they're
Mm-hmm.
landing on pads, but they're a little firmer, and
Yeah.
it makes it easier for them to stick their landing, but also it makes it harder if you're not landing it, but it's rare that they're not landing it at that stage. And that's actually, so part of the reason why, so there is a bit of a focus on falling, not nearly as much in parkour or as in martial arts. There's a lot more focus in parkour and martial arts, but part of the reasoning is, in my opinion, that in parkour and in martial arts, you have to adapt to a changing factor. So in parkour, you're adapting to the environment, and your movement has to be different depending on what you're doing and where. And the different surfaces are going to be a factor, the different height, the different width, everything like that is going to be a factor. While in gymnastics, the goal is to make it as repeatable as possible so that what you're doing will try to be the exact same thing that you've done 1,000 times before. And in parkour, let's say you're doing, let's say it's a flip, because in gymnastics, there's also flips, but maybe it's a flip but between two things. There might be a height difference, and that's going to change your timing in the air, and it's going to change when to open and like how you want to land. And then is it concrete versus grass? Are there ledges involved? Is there a step up before the takeoff? Do I step onto it? Do I not? So there's all these factors that you have to like plan for. And then those factors can also get in the way. And when you're just like repeating the exact same thing over and over again, there's like a little less to worry about. So there's less, there's still like risk of falling, and people fall all the time in gymnastics. But because it's soft and because they're doing a move that they've done 1,000 times before, it's like less talked about. The main thing that I remember is, like kind of the obvious things, like when falling backwards, don't reach behind you. And when falling forwards, roll out. But the thing is, because you're on pads all the time, you're just doing somersaults. So like you'll just like, they'll teach kids to do a front flip. Like let's say it's off a trampoline onto a mat. The trampoline can give you an extra boost. So maybe you land and you're falling forward. They just teach them to just roll out real quick, which is great. And if you were on hard ground and that was what you knew, maybe you'd tap your head and that would be bad, but it's better than face planting.
100%. Yes.
Cause if you can, like, if you're rolling quickly, a head tap is terrible. And if you're on concrete, it can lead to a concussion, but also there is a way to roll straight over and not tap your head. So
100%.
So it's like, it's not a bad option. And then for backwards rolling, honestly, at really high speeds, like if you do a huge backwards flip and you land and you're falling backwards, it's really hard to avoid the head in general. So the gymnastic style kind of back extension roll where you push to try and create space for your head and then land on your feet isn't a terrible option. But I like, as someone who has spent so long in parkour, I'm always trying to turn to a shoulder. I'm never trying to go straight over. But for their environment, it works because they're always on something soft.
And that's, I mean, I don't know if going to the backwards roll, because I think you taught me how to backwards roll one of the classes. And I remember you emphasized the push. It wasn't just roll over. It was once you hit your hands there, push, because you're trying to clear that head. And I made a backwards rolling tutorial, and I don't know how good it is. You'd have to judge me on that, but
it was good. I watched it.
Okay, sweet. But I remember that push, and that was one thing that I think you always instilled in our heads. Like, if you're going backwards, you can hurt your wrist, you can hurt your shoulder, but don't hurt your head, because that is the difference between a minor injury and possibly either fatal or life-changing type injury.
Sure.
So that's one thing you always stuck with me, and that's interesting that you say that. So, I mean, did you learn that push type technique from gymnastics and bring it to parkour, or was that something you learned in parkour as well? Or is it, think it just melded together for you?
Yeah, I think I would definitely attribute a lot of my falling technique stuff to the work that Amos has put out with the Parkour Ukemi. And I did like a workshop with him a very long time ago at a gym in Marin.
Okay.
And we did go over like backwards rolling stuff a little bit. And yeah, because I've also like early on, one of my training partners had a really strong Japanese jiu-jitsu background.
Okay.
And the way that they would back roll is they would stick out one arm and then
Yeah.
protect the head like this. And it works great. And sometimes I'll still like introduce people to rolling that way. Not usually, but maybe if they're less athletic or they're having trouble.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you're not going to be able to land on your feet very easily.
Yeah.
So that push, not only can it like give you some distance from your head, but it also gives you just more room to bring your feet down underneath. One of, I think, the kind of most important differences that that Amos mentioned when I did the Parkour EDU certification, because I kind of brought up the point that, like, I was trying to make the argument that parkour, ukemi, and like break falls and kind of the system that he's been putting out is better than martial arts break falls, because I'm like, because we can do it on concrete and stuff like that. And he's like, he said something that was, I thought it was really well put, which is like, they have different purposes almost, because in parkour, you want to be able to get up right there and then and do it again and still have that chance of falling. Like, you might try a move and roll on concrete 10 or 20 times.
Yeah.
In martial arts, your training is all on mats, and one roll on concrete, let's say you roll slightly wrong and you bump a bone in your back or something like that.
Yep.
If that roll on concrete is because you're in a life or death self-defense scenario, like, the little bruise on your back is kind of the least of your worries.
You're not even going to feel it at that moment. Yeah.
Exactly. So like, I think that, and also another kind of factor, I'm jumping around a little bit.
No, that's
something that I kind of learned now that I've been doing martial arts for longer is when you add that second person into the mix, it totally changes the techniques.
Really? Okay.
So it just makes certain things more important to practice. So for example, like in parkour, we often use this kind of diamond catching technique for our shoulder rolls, where you're going to use both hands and you can kind of catch the ground, absorb and transfer the momentum with your hands and your forearms. And in parkour, I always do it that way, and it works really well. It's kind of the most commonly done way to do it. But in martial arts, if you're being thrown and someone's holding your arm while you throw you're not going to be able to use that arm while you're rolling.
Very true.
So like practicing things like single arm dive rolls, which is a more advanced technique, can like be helpful for things like that. And then, the break fall and like rolling continuum is helpful, where you kind of are like, rolling into a break fall and then slowly almost like flipping into a break fall. Right. Those things are all beneficial as well. And I guess the other factor is that just that other person is going to be changing the angles at which you're falling to. So in parkour, it's just you and the environment. And so a lot of times falls are going to go similar ways. It's like, oh, my foot slipped out, I'm spinning this way, I'm going to be able to do this. Yeah. There are a lot of factors like varying heights, other obstacles around you, what surfaces you're on. But usually there's not a lot of moving parts. If a rail, if like an obstacle breaks or moves, those are some of the hardest falls to navigate. And so, and that's part of why, like, checking your surroundings and being aware of things like that, being aware of the structural integrity of the branch that you're swinging on or something like that, is super important. But usually in parkour, there's not another moving piece besides you. Yeah. And in martial arts, there is another moving piece. So it's just a little different. I used to think parkour breakfall was better, like parkour ukemi was like better, but really it's not better. It's just, it fits its purpose.
You didn't blow my mind, but because what you're saying makes sense. I like its core, but you're definitely just changed my mind, because I've always kind of thought that too. I was like, all right, martial arts techniques is great because you're on a pad, but when you parkour stuff is going to be more real world. But I guess it's all continuing, right? Like gymnastics is very rigid and it has exactly what you're getting into. And, yes, the padding may change, but that's over a long duration after you've gotten used to it and your bone density has kind of gotten used to that padding. Parkour, it's more variable, but now your environment, you're probably going after the same challenge, 10, 15 times, whatever it is. Right. And then you get to throw a person in the mix who's trying to throw you down. They're going to get you to the ground however they can. Right. So now there is that variable of you be coming from a 45-degree angle, coming from a 90-degree angle. You don't know how you're coming in. Geez, man, you just changed my whole brain right there. Because that's one thing I've always been saying. And now I feel like a hypocrite. Not a hypocrite. I feel like I was on the wrong path with that. But you're right. It's just like people who, I'm sure you've heard this because you exercise as well. But the functional exercise argument of, some people say only some exercises are functional and some people say all exercise is functional. It depends on the purpose of the function of it. So if you're a bodybuilder, bicep curls are functional.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now I'm connecting those two things together. I'm like, all right, martial arts stuff is very functional, but there's one thing that I want to say, that whole ki thing or the, breathing out.
Yeah.
You remember that article I read, and I think we talked about it real quick about that being shown not to do anything at all.
So that's one of the things that I've had a lot of trouble like understanding with break falls is, and I've always thought that this was just like a lack of knowledge or like just a missing piece on my end. And I think it still is, but maybe you can shed some light on it. Which is like, so the whole ki, like my understanding is the goal is to like tense up the abdomen and kind of like expel air so that you're not getting the wind knocked out of you or something. I don't know what the goal is. I think that's what the goal is.
I think that's what the goal is too. But there's two ways to think about it. You do it, you push the air out. So you're knocking the wind out of yourself without the sudden jerk, so you're doing the same exact thing, but now it's controlled versus, getting the wind knocked out of you. But I think the majority of the time when wind gets knocked out of you is when you're not expecting the fall. Is what I've noticed. So I did judo for a little bit. Whenever I knew I was like, if someone was purposely throwing me, I almost never got the wind knocked out of me. If someone was throwing me and we were what was it called? Rolling. Yeah. I would sometimes get the wind knocked out of me, whether or not I did the whole little ki. I think I did it, and maybe I was just bad timing. And I always had the same question. And I read that research article that's on my Science Falling page and on my Science Falling website, but they tested martial art techniques and they found there was no difference in anything with expelling the air yourself. There literally was no benefit to it. All the other rolls, these martial arts, these are martial arts, not parkour rolls, but all those other falling techniques, break falls, rolls, all dissipated force like dramatically. And they save people's hips, they would save people's knees and back and everything. But that was the one technique that had no real science behind it. It didn't really make any sense. Now I can get the idea behind it, and a lot of things that we don't have research on are still, real. Like meditation now is found to actually change the brain, whereas back in the day it was never accepted. It was kind of considered hippie-ish or something like that, and it has real benefits. So I'm curious in the next 10 years if someone does another study and finds that it actually does do something, but right now it seems like it doesn't do much. It's just kind of an old tradition.
Well, like we were saying, like thanks to The Office, like some people are going to be already like a little nervous or embarrassed their first time at parkour. When really there's no reason to be. You're just like moving your body. It's like it's not so different from like going for a run or like like there's not anything weird or like comedic associated with rock climbing. Very true. But at the same time, like the ki would definitely be the most embarrassing part of practicing break falls. I don't teach the ki, but now I just feel validated for not teaching the ki. That's great.
There you go. If we learned anything today, you were validated. That's all I care about. It works for me. But it's true. It's that's the one thing that I've always been really interested with parkour is I found a real passion for it when I was at the Flying Frog, and I was a big bodybuilder kid. I think you remember me when I came in, I had some muscle. I have no muscle now, but back then, I was embarrassed to tell people I did parkour because there was such a bad stigma around it. And now I finally got to the point where I can go to the park and like jump around and jump on rails and do my own thing. But there's still a little part of me in the back of my head. It's like, I probably look like the weird kid, on the playground doing whatever I want to do, and people are staring at me. But it's what's different between someone doing push-ups on the ground and then someone, bouncing on a rail. You're just using your body in a different way. There's really nothing bad about it. And I feel like doing push-ups is great, but learning how to use your body in all situations is probably a little more beneficial. So I don't know. That's how I would tell myself. I'm like, I'm just being functional. I'm trying to like protect myself and be cool and learn to balance. But it's been always interesting to me to have that kind of mindset of It's embarrassing, especially after Office, which was funny. Don't get me wrong. The Office was.
Oh, I loved it when it first came out. I was watching The Office. I was actually in France, like at the basically the origins of parkour.
Yeah.
I was staying in Paris, but we were making day trips down to Elise,
Oh,
which
sweet.
is where parkour originated. And that episode came out, and my buddy who I was there with, we were actively watching it. So we watched it like a day after it came out. We were like, "Oh my god, they referenced parkour. That's hilarious."
Uh-huh.
But eventually it gets old.
Oh,
When you're in the parkour community, people yelling parkour at you while you do parkour is like, it's entertaining for them because they think they're very clever, but
yeah.
it's just like, it's like if you have a name that sounds like something silly, like the same jokes are going to be made every single time, and everyone thinks they're clever, but really it's just beat to death.
It gets old. I know, because I remember when I was there, I was working security at the same time at a mall. So Paul
Right.
Blart got screamed at me a lot. And then I'm
Oh,
doing
yeah.
parkour outside. I get yelled at parkour. I'm like, man, I can't get away from this. I'm just getting beat up everywhere I go. But it's so great, man. It's I think now I don't know. I've talked to some friends and they say now it's lost a tide of popularity, but I feel like now it's becoming more mainstream with like World Chase Tag, and now it's getting some respect, and people are seeing that, man, this is actually kind of fun, and it allows you to play in an adult-like fashion.
Yes. And so that's kind of what I think is like, if you're out, and let's say you're at a park and you want to go like hang around from some tree branches, balance on a rail or something like that. So number one, if I had a friend who was a DJ in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and he always used to say, like, you can't, if you see someone over there like dancing, having a good time, if they look silly, but they're having a good time, like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the more important part of that? Like, they're out there getting after it,
Oh, yeah.
having fun. If you're judging them, that's kind of on you.
Yeah,
Number
for
one.
sure.
And so that kind of like shifted my perspective there, because in high school, it's like, I mean, like, dancing in public is almost like speaking in public. Like, it's
Oh, yeah.
scary, and it's, if you're the only one dancing, that's a whole other level.
Oh,
You know what I
terrifying.
mean? Yeah. But yeah, so like, if I see someone who's like the only one dancing and,
Mhm.
and they're doing whatever silly moves they're doing, I can smile and be like, they look silly, and I can also be like, respect. You know what I mean? Like they don't care. They're just down to have a good time. They're feeling the music and they're having fun. And I feel like just play in general should be more encouraged, and use of public spaces should be a lot more varied and
Yes.
more like open to things like fitness and community and stuff like that. So if you're over there like balancing at a park, just know that at first it'll be embarrassing, or it might be, not for everybody. But at first it might be embarrassing. You might be nervous that people are going to call on you, or maybe you're nervous that you're going to fall, because that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But just know that you're doing something good, because you're kind of encouraging other people to see the world around them in different ways, and like you're making it more okay for us to use the environment in these ways. And countless times, like, kids want to join in right away.
Yeah.
Sometimes adults do too, but the kids don't have this mindset of what's allowed in an environment and what's not. They just they just want to have fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I think it's worth pushing past that. And you can also use it as an opportunity to talk to people, so if people are if people come at you heated, get down from there.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity to just have a little conversation about what you're doing. And but yeah, it's it gets complicated the more you because there's a lot of different ways people can respond. But in the end, I think you're doing a kind of the world a service, pushing things in a good direction for play and for fitness and for fun and for the environment. So
I agree, and I kind of like the idea, or the frame of mind that you're saying, that it allows people to be a little less rigid in their kind of thinking. And kids don't have that framework of, I'm an adult now, I'm not allowed to do this because it's considered childish. When in reality, kids don't have that, because they're using their bodies, they're being human, they're moving around, they're having fun, they're exploring their environment, they're trying to learn. or at some point down the line as adults, we're told, okay, you can go to the gym and lift weights and that's going to be acceptable because you're doing these defined patterns. But for some reason, using your body to its fullest extent is looked down upon. And I don't know if that is obviously in some respects, if you're like the highest of your sport or whatever, because you're so good at it, people look at you and say, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
They're the best. So it's okay for them. But for me, it wouldn't be possible. I don't know if that's because we, as we grow older, we get into the 9 to 5, we sit in a desk all day, whatever it is, and we lose those abilities. So then we feel inadequate to do those, and we feel embarrassed, just like the dancing, because we're not going to be good at it. Obviously, you've worked with adults, so I'm sure you've had people come in there and they're got dragged in by their friend or something. They don't really believe in parkour, whatever it is. I mean, how do you break down those beliefs? Because for me, with science of falling and trying to mix these two worlds of healthcare and kind of parkour and the falling aspects, that's the biggest thing I've run into so far, is that people think it's cool. They respect the idea, but there's respecting the idea and then buying into the idea. I think those are two different things. And people just see, well, why would I want to go outside and fall? Why? Like, that doesn't help me. Well, because I see 90-year-olds come in with broken hips all the time, and they never learn how to fall because it wasn't cool. So like, how do you reconcile the idea of not wanting to do it with teaching them in the parkour space?
Yeah. So I think if someone, doesn't see the value in one area, they may end up seeing value in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you can just give them an enjoyable like fitness experience, mm-hmm. I think that's a good start at least. So, if they're like, if they just think parkour is silly from The Office or whatever it may be. And, it's like spending a ton of time jumping around on walls is like a little silly. That's okay. Sure. There's nothing wrong with it being silly. A lot of activities are silly. And, like a lot of it's just about culture and stuff. Like rollerblading went from being super cool to being like made fun of by skateboarders. And now it's pretty cool again. And like, same with scootering, and it's the same thing. True. It's like, once a guy starts doing double backflips on a scooter, you're like, well, I can't deny that that's cool.
Right. It's instantly cool after that. Yeah.
But to me, what's cool is like people being willing to try and willing to do things. So what's cool is not about the skill level. What's cool is someone who's like putting aside their kind of nervousness and being able to go for things. And that's one thing that I think is really valuable in the parkour community, and also very strong in the tricking community, which is that, people will encourage you and get excited for you for accomplishing your challenge, no matter how impressive it is in the grand scheme of the parkour, like ability level. If you overcome like a mental barrier, everyone's stoked for you, and you should be like stoked for yourself. And that's one of the things that keeps people coming back, is you're overcoming mental and physical challenges. And when you kind of see that the other people there, like people come in constantly and think, especially because at our Friday adult class, there's a few people who've been coming really consistently. They've all been doing parkour for at least 2 years. And so, once 1 to 3 times a week for 2 years, you're going to be pretty proficient.
Oh, for sure.
And people come in and get intimidated by that. But at the same time, these people want new people to come. They're extremely welcoming. And when that person starts like doing whatever small thing that we start them with, we're all excited for them. There's not a judgment of, man, this guy's really unathletic. Like that doesn't cross our mind at all, because we're happy that you got out and that you're trying. That's what's important. What's important is like, having pushing aside that nervousness and that embarrassment, or just living with it, but still doing it anyways. And then kind of enjoying the fact that you're exercising, you're challenging yourself. Maybe there's a little bit of fear. Maybe you're just listening to your body. If we can incorporate like a game or something like that to kind of break down some of those nerves, that's great too. But I think just trying to provide people with a positive experience and having a really encouraging environment with with a culture of other people there who are also going to be like encouraging and welcoming, kind of making it, we just had a staff meeting the other night, and one of my coaches called it scalable enthusiasm.
Oh, I love it.
Enthusiasm. It's almost like the enthusiasm doesn't scale, but the abilities scale, right?
Yeah,
the enthusiasm stays the same no matter like what ability level you're dealing with, because it's not about the skill in the end. Like you're not gonna change your life once you can jump 12 feet. You know what I mean? It's not about the numbers. It's more about what it does to you and to your, like, how you feel about it.
You're breaking your own barriers, and that's making you better, whether athletically or mentally or whatever it is. And that's giving you some joy in your life, and then the people around you. And I've experienced this firsthand, especially in the parkour community, will cheer you on. And you're saying that enthusiasm level for your first Kong, your first roll, is the exact same as someone who's doing like a insane, like double backflip on flat ground or something. And that's just like the enthusiasm is the same. Obviously one trick is way cooler than the other in the grand scale of the sport and everything. But for that person, they're the exact same coolness. Like if I see someone who was in there, and I've seen this before, and I've cheered people on doing their first Kong, I'm like, well, my buddy Nick, I mean, I don't know if he's even still coming there. I remember Nick came, and I was there a little bit longer than he was. I think he came like a month after I started. Yeah. And we started challenging each other, and like I was better at Kongs than he was, but he was better at like rolls for a while than I was. So we would just egg each other on. And if one of us got the thing that the other person was good at already, it was like, dude, yes, like I love it. Right. So, and it was, I like it. Scalable enthusiasm. I just so awesome. I think that's the cool thing about the parkour community, is it is so kind of loving and enthusiastic, and everybody's there for you. And I think that was something that I found was really helpful getting into the space of learning how to roll and learning to push my limits, because I don't think I ever told you this. I wanted to come to the Flying Frog for like 3 months before I finally did it. I was terrified because I was like, parkour's weird. It's this weird sport. It's a YouTube sport, right? Yeah. Like I'm going to be terrible. I lift weights. How am I going to do a Kong or something? And then I finally just bit the bullet. And I think I actually bit the bullet twice. And the first time I canceled because I was so scared. I was like, I can't go. Oh, man. So I finally went, and then, doing that class with Justin in my first Kong that day, I think I hyperextended my knee. Like I got hurt my first day. Oh, no. Oh, that was sick. I'm going back. Let's do it. Because Justin was so freaking excited for me when I got my Kong, because he saw, the smile on my face. I was like, that was awesome. I've been wanting to do that forever. Like I'm complete. I never have to do the sport again. I'm happy. Right. I did what I came here to do. Mic drop. Let's go. Yeah. So in terms of like falling techniques, what do you think is and this is going to be not a cut or dry question, but what do you think is the ultimate falling technique? What's your number one go-to? If you had to pick one and you could only do one falling technique for the rest of your life, what would it be? So I think I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Okay, go for it. So there's something that Amos teaches called he calls it the half roll. And basically you get into a position, like a sitting position, like you're about to come out of a forward roll and stand up, forward shoulder roll. But you rock back towards your back shoulder. You stop at the shoulder, like avoiding the head touching the ground, and then you rock back forwards to come up, and you can stand up. So like if like I'm gonna kind of rephrase the question. If I had one like tool for teaching people how to like catch themselves falling, it would be that to start, because you get the front roll and the back roll. Oh, all right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you're rocking back and forth. And then that's also very similar to what you do when you're learning how to roll on a hard surface, because everybody's like soft tissue pathway, the path that you roll on where you're not bumping bones on your back, everybody's is different, because we all have different proportions and like different levels of body fat and different amounts of muscle. And I think that there is a soft tissue pathway for everyone. But if you're like really bony and skinny, it's a little bit harder. So, if you like do some back workouts or
start drinking a bunch of like, gallon of milk a day or whatever it is, if you build up your mass a little bit, then sometimes it will get easier.
So what I'm hearing you say is eat like a full cake every day and rolling will be really easy.
For sure. Yep.
Okay. All right. That's what I heard.
I mean, the rounder you are, the easier rolling is. But yeah. So what you do is you kind of just play with rocking on a surface that's hard enough where you get the feedback to feel where you're bumping, and you play with like different axes. So maybe I'm going to roll a little more sideways. Maybe I'm going to roll a little bit straighter. And then you play with changing the shape of your body, rounding and opening. It took me years before I was able to roll on concrete without bumping like my hip bone or my shoulder bone. And, occasionally I would do it like for a video or if I was falling, and it would just be like, oh, okay, well, I'm fine. I don't want to do more rolls because my shoulder hurts, but the roll protected me.
Yes.
And that's kind of like what I was talking about with martial arts. Like for at the beginning, you don't need a beautiful shoulder roll that works 1,000 times on concrete. But if you want to get to a really high level in parkour, it's something that's worth investing the time in for sure. And that one technique has kind of all three. It has the front roll, the back roll, and it has this tool for finding your soft tissue pathway. Yeah,
that's really good. And I think there's another part in there that you may have never thought about, but I'm going from my PT mindset here.
Yeah.
It's so true. When you first start rolling, I hate rolling on concrete. I always have. I suck at it. Even the black flooring you have at the Frog.
Yeah.
I would go in there and force myself to roll in there because I hated it. But I think the difference between, this isn't the PT mindset part, but I think the difference between practicing rolling and falling on accident and rolling is that there's a little bit of that adrenaline. So when you fall on accident, you don't feel it as much. But if you force yourself to fall, you feel everything and it sucks.
Yeah, true.
But I think practicing it is important, even if it sucks a little bit, because not only do you get better at the tissue pathway and figuring out where your kind of line is for that diagonal, but from the PT side, your bone density is going to start modeling according to how you roll. So even if you have a really just poor line on that, you don't really follow your soft tissue mass, your bones are going to get stronger in that position. So next time you do fall, your bones, if you've been practicing this for a while, are actually going to be stronger and you have less likely injury, even if your roll technique isn't perfect.
Yeah.
Which I think, go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's just really awesome. So
yeah. And kind of to bring it up, like, back to, so in parkour, we roll, sometimes it's not a fall, sometimes it's an intentional roll from a landing, maybe just to absorb impact. Like we're intentionally dropping. And in that case, this is a technique that you've practiced, many, many times. And so you can try to recreate the same roll every time. But in a fall, sometimes your roll pathway is going to be a little bit off. So that's a great point in that, like, even if you're great at finding the soft tissue pathway, if you're falling, there are going to be times where you're not hitting that soft tissue pathway perfectly. I think that the key is, if you just go out and you try a roll on concrete, that's probably going to turn you off from rolling on concrete.
Oh, 100%.
Like, unless you're just lucky and you just found that pathway, or, some people like have just kind of a much wider margin for error than other people. But if you go on grass and start like rolling around, like I was talking about, maybe with some like long sleeves or something, if you don't want to get those little grass scratches. I think a huge part of kind of my philosophy with fitness is you should enjoy what you're doing, because if you're going to come back and do it again, then you're going to get a lot more benefit from just doing it once. And if you do it once and don't like it, then you're not going to gain any benefit. So 100%. Like whatever is going to get you coming back. And for me, I've always been, very fit because I was in gymnastics. I was on a competitive gymnastics team from age 8 to 17.
Animal.
And, we work out a lot. But, I would just like do what the coach said. But after that point, all my fitness has either been just because it's fun. Like parkour, it's challenges and you're playing, you're moving through the environment. And you're kind of trying to accomplish these goals that you're setting for yourself. It's also a creative outlet. It's all these pieces. And then in jiu-jitsu, it's literally like a game. You're playing a game where you're battling someone else in this like physical chess match. If I'm going in the gym and working out personally, it's just because I'm so passionate about these other things that I want to gain some kind of advantage or just prepare my body for what I would like it to be able to do. And so, I've never been super motivated to just go out to the gym and like bust out a bunch of reps. But I'm always motivated to like play the game, to do I just want to have fun.
Yeah.
I'm still just a kid.
For sure.
And so if you can make falling practice fun, to me, that's what's going to really help, because practicing falling once or twice isn't actually going to be enough to get you the appropriate reaction when you have a fall. It has to be something that you've at least done, that you've done a lot or like very consistently, so that you have the proper reactions kind of built into you. Yeah,
no, I agree. And that's one thing I've noticed with the patients I work with, because since I like the balance stuff, I get a lot of the balance patients that come into the clinic. And right now in the clinic, because we don't have the facility for it, we don't have the pads and everything, I don't teach people how to fall on their backs or anything yet, but I do teach people how to do stepping reactions. So stepping out to the side and catching themselves. And we do games where I will have them put all their body weight into me, and then I drop them. So there's an actual falling sensation, and then they have to step out and catch themselves. And these people often freak out, get scared, they scream in the clinic, and then they laugh afterwards.
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
It's so much fun, because they're like, oh my God, it's like going on a roller coaster. I'm right there to catch them. There's no danger at all. But the people that I do fun things like that with, that it's hard, but it's really beneficial. It scares them a little bit, but after they get over that initial fear point, there's that little adrenaline spike. I'm like, oh my God, that was actually really fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
And then, they come back later and they say, oh my God, I stumbled the other day and I caught myself because I knew how to do this. We trained it. It's super cool. But then, I do obstacle courses stuff. When I'm just working on pure balance, I literally take up our whole entire front section. And I'm sure the other PTs hate me sometimes when I do that, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to take all this equipment. I'm going to make a Ninja Warrior course and I'm going to make these people do it. And there'll be other patients coming like, this isn't PT. This kid's just playing with these guys. I'm like, yeah, it's because it's super fun and they enjoy it. And these are the people that come back, not only come back, but they get better. They get better balance. They learn how to catch themselves falling. And just for, fun and doing my own little experiments, I'll take other people that come in and maybe they're just not as, I don't even know they're not as like into that kind of stuff. So we do traditional PT exercises. We do normal balance stuff where they just kind of stand on their feet, they close their eyes, turn their head and stuff. And I try to make it fun, make jokes and stuff, but they just don't make as much progress because they're not excited about it, not enthusiastic about the work. So I think making it fun is paramount. I don't think anything that you have to do to make yourself better it's like eating vegetables. People hate vegetables, right? So they don't eat them even though they're good for you. But exercise and trying to make yourself better and be able to fall, it doesn't have to be boring. It can be as fun as you want to make it. And you just make your own challenges. And I think that's what's cool with the parkour communities, because you have all that excitement and enthusiasm around you from other people. And like the flying frog, you have bright colors everywhere. There's so many things that you can try to figure out and do and like make lines and be creative. It adds a whole nother dynamic to it that I think some people are missing out on. And I think that people get scared of falling because my face is very, very bright right now in the video. I think it's because, you look at these things and you say, well, I'm an adult. I shouldn't do that. You're in this very rigid, it must be boring type of mindset. So it's interesting that happens. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I've noticed, that making something fun is going to change the whole entire learning environment.
Yes, one of the things that I get to see now is, one of our adult members who's been coming for a couple of years, his kids have been doing parkour since they've been like 2. And now one of them is like 6 and the other one's 5, like 6 or 7 and 5. And so they get to do parkour together now.
Oh, that's awesome.
So cool. And, he was just telling me that they went to a park the other day and they were like jumping from rock to rock and like if it was too big, then the dad would hold out his hand and the kid would jump and like catch on.
Oh, sweet.
Like a cat leap, holding onto his hand, and then he would like pull her up. And it's just so cool. Like I think that's one thing that I've gained from working with kids is there's this stigma that adults like shouldn't be silly, you know? And when you work with kids, if you can be silly, they do so much better, like listening, following along. Like we said, it's because they're having fun. They're enjoying themselves. Kids don't want to work hard.
No.
But like, who does really, you know?
but kids don't have that concept yet. Why would I work hard? My life is to have fun. And then you put them in school and then they kind of start learning a little bit, but I like where you're going with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and you know, like I'm sure everybody remembers, I mean, maybe not everybody has been like physically active, as a child, but you know, I have memories of like, you know, being cold and like not wanting to like play or something like that. But then you get into the game and suddenly next thing you know, like you're dripping sweat and you've like just ran for a long time and you're like, and you know, you don't even realize that you just exercised.
Yeah.
You know, but because you were having fun the whole time and you're focused on the game.
Well, exercise isn't part of your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
exactly.
You're not exercising, you're just enjoying yourself and you're using your body to do it. And you have the added benefits of being healthy and everything, but it's true. I mean, I don't think exercise should be something you should be focused on. It should be moving your body and having fun.
Yes. And then, if you have, you know, specific goals, if you're into bodybuilding or whatever, then sure. But I do think that there's definitely like whatever's going to keep you coming back. So if at least for health, you know, not that everybody has to be a parkour athlete, but even just whatever's going to get you to like go out and take walks, you know, if you can make that walk more fun and more interesting in some way. We've been doing like plant identification while we go on walks. You know, we got an app on our phone where you can just poke it at a plant. And so to me, like that makes going on a walk more fun because going on a walk doesn't sound very fun to me unless I'm going to do parkour on the way. Well,
now you're doing a learning, like
exactly
like adventure, right? You're not walking, you're going to learn and do other things.
Exactly.
And it's super interesting to me. You and your girlfriend, right? Dee, or fiance now. I don't know what part of your relationship you're in, but I don't want to get you in trouble by saying that. She listens to this. She loves weightlifting. She's CrossFitter, right?
Yes.
So I mean, and you're not a CrossFitter, I don't think at this point in time. I'm sure she's tried to make you try though a few times.
I've done I think a class or two, and then when they were doing Zoom classes, I would do that with her.
So I think it's interesting that you two love movement, but completely different movements, right? Although she was a gymnast too for a while, if I remember correctly.
She worked at gymnastics gyms, but she actually never was a gymnast. Her older sister was a gymnast. And
I've been lied to this entire time.
Her mom worked at the front desk of the gymnastics gym, so she was just one of those kids who like was around and so learned some gymnastics, but she never competed or anything.
Oh my God! This whole time I've been lied to. Maybe I lied to myself. I just assumed she was. I don't know.
Well, you know, when someone's good at teaching something, you assume that they did it. But the thing, that's another difference between gymnastics and parkour. There is no adult gymnastics community. You know what I mean? Gymnastics is something you do as a kid and then you stop doing, which like it makes sense because it's hard on your body. But at the same time, that's when you're putting value on the level of the abilities that you're doing, as opposed to putting value elsewhere. So if your value in parkour is that you're having fun, that you're being physically active, that maybe it gets you outside, maybe you use it to play with your kids, you know, there's all these things. Maybe it just increases your balance. It makes you safer. Then you should be less concerned about the fact that, you know, 10 years ago, you could jump farther than you can now. Or, you know, maybe you don't even do many jumps at all anymore. Maybe you're more focused on like crawling and rolling and hanging. And, you know, like it should be kind of adaptable to everyone. And gymnastics could be that way too, but it's a little harder. But you know, I think I sent you a video. I don't know if it was the same guy, but if like an old 90 something year old guy who went and started doing gymnastics, and he would just bounce on his back on the trampolines just to like build some body awareness and change things around. And so like there are ways to kind of adapt things for different skill sets, or for different like ages and ability levels and fitness levels. But the hard part is, as the person, you kind of have to put your ego away a little bit. Yeah. Because when there are other people around you doing more impressive things, there's this want to prove yourself, or you know, like I've had adults say like, oh, you know, like my eyes still like look at things as if I'm 20, you know, like I see a thing and I'm like, oh, I could do that. But realistically, like I haven't been physically active in like 15 years, you know what I mean? So it's a weird thing. Like you don't realize what your body is capable of anymore if you're not using your body.
And, you know, I think there's another edge to that. And I do this all the time because I work with people with injuries. So a lot of people's brains, they do. I'll talk to 70-year-olds, and I have literally asked the question, how old do you feel like you are? Because I'm like, you're 25. Don't tell me you're 70. Don't worry about it. And they'll say, I feel 25. Honestly, I've never felt 70 in my life. But at the same time, they limit themselves. In their brain, they feel 25, but they say, I'm 70. You know, I'm getting old. That's why things. And I literally tell people, don't ever, ever, ever tell me it's my age that's stopping me. It's because you stopped doing it, and you're for some reason, whether you were told not to or not, you stopped doing it. But I love that you know that older gentleman was out there trying to do gymnastics. Like, get rid of that thought and just did it, because you're only gonna live one life, right? If you want to go to gymnastics, jump on a trampoline, just go do it. Like that's how you got to do it. And it's awesome that people think that way, but it's rare.
And if you're getting into something as an older person, you just got to remember that it's not about training hard. It's about training smart, and it's about like enjoying yourself. Yeah. And like I've said many times, if you're going to come back, then you're going to get stronger. You're going to get more fit, and you're going to get better. Mm-hmm. But if you stop doing it, then you're not. So like might as well ease yourself in however you can. And you know, you want to be smart so you don't get hurt. Like bouncing on your back on the trampoline is great because you're spreading out your surface area so much that it's pretty easy to be safe. Yeah. And there, you know, I think there's ways to kind of adapt many activities.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's one of those things, kind of like you said, the ego needs to be put aside, and then you just need to respect where you're at right now, because you will get better as long as you work on it. I mean, it's not going to be a trajectory. There's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be days where you're just not feeling it. But as long as you do it and you put your ego aside and say, all right, this is where I'm at today. I may have been able to do, you know, a double backflip in my 20s, but now I'm 50. I can still move. I still have that ability, but I got to know that I may not be at that point I was before right now. I may be able to get there again, but got to respect that. And kind of going off that, I want to ask you, since Science of Falling is this idea, this project to try to combine these two worlds of healthcare, physical therapy, and hopefully beyond that eventually, and, you know, parkour, I guess I could say gymnastics and martial arts too, because they all involve some sort of balance and falling. How would you combine these two worlds? How would you get these people to buy in that may benefit from learning to fall, whether it be, you know, just the forward and backward rocking or the full-fledged forward rolls and break falls? What was your idea be to kind of bridge those gaps?
So you're asking about combining the worlds of like physical therapy and healthcare with like fitness, gymnastics, parkour,
kind of like type thing? How would you get someone to buy into the idea that the ideas of parkour and ukemi being beneficial for you for both play but also safety to someone in the physical therapy world or healthcare world, you know, patient who would benefit from those techniques, but they're scared to because they're in the mindset of, I'm here to get treated for an injury, a pathology, an issue. Why would I want to do all that stuff? Because I just want to get better and go on. Who cares if I fall again in the future?
Yeah.
Hard question. Sorry.
It is. I mean, so I'm just going to give my thoughts on it because, like you said, I don't think I have an answer. I don't think I have the answer, right?
I didn't expect you to, but I've asked this question before in the past to some people, and it's just interesting to see what people think because, you know, it's a problem I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. Well, I think this is part of a huge part of why you started Science of Falling, but I think a lot of the healthcare community and even just our society is a lot about like treating the symptom
Mm-hmm.
rather than and there's rather than the cause and even more so like there's less of a focus on preventative medicine than there is on like treating things after they happen.
Sadly, yes.
And that I think that's partially because like people are going to be willing to do a lot more and spend a lot more money once they're already in pain and need the problem to be solved.
Yep.
But as somebody who's had overuse injuries that I've had to like put a lot of dedication into rehabbing, I now understand the benefit of and the value of like kind of whatever preventative things you can, because you can end up in these situations where that are hard to get out of. And a fall is exactly like that. So maybe like especially with older adults, maybe drawing an analogy for people could be a way to get them to understand it a little bit more, because I think that's a lesson that adults learn all the time. It's like, oh, like you didn't care about your finances when you were younger. Did it come back to bite you? Yeah, probably,
I like it.
So like maybe there's some analogies that can be used to kind of help get people to come to that conclusion a little bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the preventative thing, like, so this is something that I think about as well because of all my students. I'm trying to think, how do I keep them safe?
Yeah.
How much should we be including ukemi and also strength training? Because if my students are going to be like athletes and they're going to be performing these feats, their body needs to be strong enough to be able to do it. And so it's really hard to like find this balance of meeting that person's individual needs, but also like incentivizing them to do whatever they need to do, because I'm not with them all the time, and neither are you. You're with them for a very short period of time, and then you somehow have to convince them that it's in their best interest to do these exercises at home. But at the same time, like, I'm a huge fan of PT because that's what worked for me, and a lot of it was research that I did on my own, but it was all about the consistency to like rebuild the strength in the right way, and getting, the right mobility. Just kind of made huge differences for me. But yeah, I guess that's the challenge, man. That's what I'm struggling with too, is like, how much can I include in my time with people? And then how much should they be doing on their own? And how do I get them to do it on their own?
Which is the hardest part, man. I got to tell you, I have like a 50% success rate with people doing their, what we call HEP. So home exercise program. And it's, it's one of those, it's going to be forever a challenge, because no matter how much research is out there about movement being good for you, or no matter how fun it is, it's work. When you're an adult, it turns into work, and even if it's going to be great for you, it's hard to do. But I love your idea of trying to link the preventative nature and the benefits of that with something that they already kind of know inherently, money, whatever it's money, or taking care of your car, or, loving your kids and showing them love every day so that, they don't come to resent you in the future, whatever it is, something that people inherently know and they try to take to heart because they know it's going to help them out. But you're right. The part of Science of Falling was the preventative nature of it. And because we don't do almost any of that in healthcare, we, insurance will not pay 9 times out of 10 for preventative care at all. They will pay out as much as they want once you break your leg, because they have to, right? That's their job, but they will not teach you how not to break your leg. They don't care about that,
which is so weird, because
it blows my mind.
Well, and to draw another analogy, there's like for motorcycles, if you take the motorcycle safety course and you can get your license without doing a test,
which is nuts.
Right. Well, I mean, so there's like a test within the safety course, but it's easier. But also they're like, it's a preventative education tool.
Yeah.
So the system is built around you being able to like get this benefit for doing this education piece.
Yeah.
And then there's like different levels to it. So you can take the level 2 course, and then, they give you some statistic about like how many people crash who don't do the level 2 course versus who do. And part of that is like the person who's going to opt in to doing more safety training is probably just going to be a safer, less risk-taking individual in general. But
true.
There should be some kind of system set up to, and it should be in the insurance company's best interest to prevent people from getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, maybe part of the factor is that maybe when someone gets hurt, they're willing to like later on in their life buy more expensive insurance or something like that because they've had those experiences. I don't know, but
it's a weird, I mean, there are some preventative programs, but you're not going to see insurance pay out for a 40-year-old who wants to go learn how to fall at the PTs. Cause they're like, you're probably not going to get hurt for another 20 years. We're still going to make money off of you.
Yeah.
And by the time you do get hurt, we already made, $3,000, $5,000 off you a year. I think we can cover it. We're fine. Like, it's strange. And I've always looked at, you may have heard me say this analogy, or you may have used this analogy before, but, with someone on a motorcycle, you talk to anybody who's riding a motorcycle, they'll probably tell you, I'll probably go down one day.
Yeah.
But I'm hopefully wearing my leathers and I kind of know what to do. When we walk in our body, this is our vehicle. You know what I mean? Like, people will say, "Oh, I got good balance. I'll never fall." You walk on ice, you walk on a weird path where it's just gravelly, you might fall. It's just, you got 80 to 90 to 100 years on this earth if you're living a good one.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot of steps.
It's a lot of steps to not know how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's always been something that racks my brain. I wish that could be something that could be changed, where every insurance would pay for preventative medicine, and PT, and even going to a personal trainer would become on the forefront of that, because that's how you're going to do a lot of that preventive medicine is movement training. So like, I wish that they would pay people to go learn parkour at the Flying Frog and be like, all right, you learned how to fall. Great. Now you get like 10%, reduction in your yearly expenses, because now we know you're safer. Just like, if you're a safe driver.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Like, I think, some businesses have fitness like bonuses for people, if they're in a fitness program because they know it's better for their health and wellness in general, there's the like company will like pay part of their membership fee or something like that.
Yeah.
It's the same philosophy. And honestly, I think like a falling prevention program should fit in for things like that, because if you're trying to prevent things that are going to stop your employee from coming into work, a fall could very easily stop your employee from coming into work, and it 100%. Could lead to a lawsuit, like if it happened at work. Right. So like, I don't know. I definitely think like, I think we're working towards a day when it'll be embraced a little bit more. But I think, anybody who's, I don't know, I guess in my personal experience, like I have seen huge value in the time I've deposited into fall practice.
Yes.
And like, it's all been pretty fun too. There's games and activities for it, or it can be, just some quick drills. You bust out a few break fall, like whenever you're warming up for whatever activity you do, you like squat down, you do a few break falls on this side, a few break falls on that side, maybe a couple rolls if the surface is soft enough. And then you
Mhm.
do, your weight lifts or whatever. You just got to be willing to be that guy who's rocking around on the floor at the gym.
Very true. Very true. One last thing on that. I gotta say, I think the funnest ukemi drill you had me do when I was at the Frog was you would put a t-shirt on the wall, and then we would do a cat leap over to the wall, and then you would grab onto the t-shirt, and you would just fall backwards, and you'd have to break, fall, or do something.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I did that, I was like, this is the stupidest, like scariest thing this kid is making me do right now. And I did it. I was like, let's go. Let's do that again. Let's go.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I got that one from Amos as well. I got to give credit where credit's due. Yeah.
You know what? I got to say, he started following my Science of Falling account, and I was super juiced when he did. Cause I don't think I followed him on my account at that time. And I was like, this guy that's cool. That's like, to me, that's like one of the ukemi gods. It's like, all right, I kind of like what you're doing there. Like I give you some, so I'm gonna have to message him one day and be like, hey, I know you don't know me. I'm a nobody, but like, you want to come on the podcast or like do something that'd be cool. All right, Christian, I know I told you about like 30, 45 minutes and I have no idea what time frame we're at. We probably just blew past that. But I gotta say, man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast for me. Any last thoughts you got about what we talked about, or I want you to, kind of promote yourself, tell people where they can find your stuff. You have a new parkour video, kind of new, came out a couple months ago, Going Nowhere Fast, which is super dope, by the way.
Thank you.
Makes me jealous. Got me a little juice to go out and do some stuff again.
Yeah.
So kind of put yourself on right now. Tell people about you, about Flying Frog, whatever you need.
Yeah, well, Flying Frog Academy is my parkour gym. It's in Rohnert Park, California, which is in Sonoma County. It's like an hour north from San Francisco.
If you like wine, and parkour, there you go.
Yeah, they can't be paired at the same time, but they you can do one after the other in the correct order.
Yes.
All ages are welcome. We have kids as young as 3. And we have adults who are actually adults, not just like an 18-year-old kid.
Yes.
We right now during the pandemic, we've been offering a lot of private lesson options as well. So anybody who's like nervous about trying something like parkour, a private lesson is a great chance where you're going to just be doing it with the coach or with whoever you sign up with. So that there can be like small groups. So, you and your friend who you don't mind like being silly with sign up together. I've seen some people do that and they have a blast.
Yeah.
We're trying to like create and kind of grow our parkour community for Rohnert Park, Sonoma County, Santa Rosa and Petaluma. If you want to come try it out and be a part of it, like everyone's welcome. As long as you're nice to people, then you're welcome to be a part of our community. I guess you can check out flyingfrogacademy.com, and then my Instagram is Christian Fairfax PK. If you want to see my moves, I don't put out a lot. But occasionally I'll save up clips and put out a big video on YouTube or something. So
I'll say you got a good backlog of things to entertain people for a while.
I do. Yeah.
I gotta say your posts and even seeing you in person has always entertained me, because Christian is, I don't know if you've noticed this from the podcast so far, very humble. He doesn't, kind of talk about himself very much. He doesn't really try to kind of show off what he's good at. But this kid is freaking fantastic. I've seen him do some things that blew my mind. I said I would probably be dead if I did that. So very humble, very awesome. I just suggest checking his stuff out for sure.
Oh, thank you, Brent. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you, and I'm very grateful that you were available to do this. And we were talking about doing this for a couple of weeks now, a couple of months. I think I asked you a long time ago to do something with me on this, and I'm happy I finally got you on here. And you are just a wealth of knowledge and perspective, and you run a fantastic business that's changing people's lives. I know it changed my life. So I appreciate you, man. I really do. And all that information that Christian talked about is going to be in not only on the website, but right underneath his name or his picture right now on the video. You should see his website, his Instagram handle. I'll put the Flying Frog Instagram up on there too.
Awesome.
And I appreciate you, Christian. Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you.